final human bell moment of intersection is happening right now. We're coming in for landing after 2 magnificent days. I'm so glad that Roger is here to tie a knot, a beautiful bow on our conversations. In your introduction of this talk, it says, embrace explicit knowledge and infuse it into our ways of working. I think it sounds cheekier than it is. Roger here is obsessed with knowledge, its forms, its ways, and its capacity to drive progress. However, he does have a lot of first-hand experience with exactly how challenging it can be to get the right knowledge to the right person at the right time. In a moment where AI really tries to help out disseminating knowledge, establishing what Roger calls purpose-driven knowledge processes becomes increasingly difficult. A true lover of business processes, he has several books to show for it, and president of Process Renewal Group, Roger is here to share his knowledge on his field of knowledge. Please give him a very warm welcome.
Is this on? It is, great, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm obsessed with knowledge, but I'm not sure if you're going to believe I actually have any knowledge. We'll see at the end of the session whether you thought this was useful or not. So I am going to talk about knowledge, and I've listened a lot over the last couple of days to what everybody's been saying, and I keep hearing knowledge, 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 either said that way or implied that way. Because I would actually contend that our job as designers, architects, engineers, wherever you come from, we really these days are in the knowledge business, much more than anything else. Because I think that if you sort of think about what's been going on here, you end up with, anybody know this movie? Can anybody name this movie? No? Oh my gosh. You guys need to get a life. No, it's a movie called A Beautiful Mind, okay? Where this gentleman at Princeton University, he's obsessed with all this stuff, and it's all cramming into his head, and he can't deal with the fact that he can't keep it there, so he's got to put all these things on the wall and connect them with strings and so what is he really doing? Maybe he's producing some sort of architecture which describes or connects together all the things that he is interested in. And so what I would actually say is that this is really where we are, because I mean, it wasn't that long ago, if you're as old as I am, it's not that long ago, when industrial organizations started to spend more money on intellectual things than physical things, especially certain industries. That's really, really clear. It is about what you know. It's about what you put together that deals with what you know and communicating that way, as opposed to the Industrial Revolution. We were just talking about the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution introduced things which were all about products which lasted 50 years, and people would go to work and do the same job every day for 50 years. Well, we're way beyond all that now, where our knowledge is really important. So knowledge capital has replaced traditional assets in a lot of industries now, where we actually have to start to deal with what are the intellectual activities we go through. So I'm contending that embedding knowledge in all the things we do is really a critical part of what we're trying to do to bring this together. Now, all the way through the last couple of days, I've been hearing a lot of things. I'm taking notes along the way. And so even this afternoon, I was updating this presentation with the insights or the things that I've heard along the way. And so I'm going to sort of overlay some of these on the materials as we go. And the first one of these is, if you don't consciously manage the knowledge assets, you will not sustain your business. It will just naturally erode, go away, and not be useful. And it's a very fast decaying asset. And so we have to continually refresh it, continually renew it. And for us, it means we have to deal with the knowledge that the business needs to be successful. But also, all the things we do, we are actually articulating and communicating knowledge, ideas. And so those are going to be critical things for us to do all the way through. So that's going to be important. Now, this is where you get to participate just for a minute or two. Why is this important? Just throw it out. Why is knowledge and knowledge management important today more than ever? Anybody want to start? Yes, sir.
Everything in our companies is going through form of transience. People or everything, so to go forward with your models without people knowing anything about it.
Right. So it's not just the model, not just the diagrams, it's what's behind all of that. Also, it's what is required to create that in the first place, right? Absolutely. Other reasons, just for businesses in general. Yes, in the back. So the misinformation. Okay, that's yes. Yeah. No, I mean, what's the average cycle of somebody in a particular role, right? I mean, it used to be decades, not anymore. I mean, you're lucky if it's measured in a few months anymore, right? When people get bored, they go somewhere else, especially the younger generation, the Gen Z generation now is basically, I mean, I know I've got two kids who are in that generation. And, you know, they don't want to do a job for the rest of their life. They don't want to work for a company for the rest of their life. I've got one daughter and her partner. They're in Europe right now, traveling around, travel blogging. And I keep saying, is this a job? And they say, yeah, we make money doing this. We make good money as social influencers. And I say, well, I still have a hard time thinking of that as a way of making money. But it's a different way of thinking that we're seeing today. And so that's going to be key. Anything else? There was another hand up over here. Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir, right here. Yeah.
It's hard to find the right decisions.
How can you make the right decisions without having the knowledge available? By the way, that doesn't stop anyone. That doesn't stop anyone from making those decisions, not having the knowledge. Yes, sir. It's really easy to forget things, yes. My excuse is there's so much crammed in there, that's why I forget what I forget, right? You know, it is absolutely. How can you remember? And the thing, too, is that it's hard to sort of become an expert on anything anymore because you're not in it long enough to truly appreciate the subtleties and the things that are taking place that way. There was another hand back here. Yes, sir. Right. It's expensive, and it's also expensive to lose it, right? Because it walks out the door pretty quickly now, and we have all these expert jobs where people don't have the time to become experts. I mean, I think we all appreciate that every single day when we interact with any company. We go online, and people just don't know. And so, and yet, they've got scripts to follow which don't at all relate to your problem. And so that's been an issue. Yes? How to know what's important and what isn't. Aha, this is really true. Because one of the reasons for that, perhaps, is we haven't shared the strategic knowledge down the organization, so people don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They don't know what the purpose is, or what they're doing is so far removed from the ultimate outcome that we're trying to accomplish. Yes, sir?
Because all the future innovations we want to see and all the change we want to make happen is always based on the existing legacy and on the
right.
existing capabilities, right? That's the foundation for change.
So we're based on old knowledge. Which brings a really key point, I think, and that is you have to keep refreshing. You have to keep refreshing it. And a point I'm going to make a bit later is this is where you've got to be really, really careful about generative AI. You know, it's sitting in its own bathwater. And if it generates based upon what it's already generated, based on what it generated before, you've got to be very, very careful. You keep filling up with new stuff all the time, and it's not going to do that by itself. It needs people to be able to do that, right? So these are all good points. I've just a bunch of stuff happening up here too. Marketplace is changing so quickly. You know, it's hard to stay with things. I'll pick a few of these. Customers expect more. You need rapid decision making. We talked about that. We have new technologies, and there's even stuff like mitigation of risk. If you don't know what you don't know, how do you know whether it's risky, right? And if you have no criteria to figure that out, it's going to be important. We talked about workforces, employee retention, and we want the organization to be sustainable. Now, by the way, when I say sustainable, I mean beyond the next quarterly return that your organization has just filed. So we do everything possible to hit that number, but we can't go beyond that number. And so, I mean, what I've seen is a number of organizations that I've worked with, the best ones I've seen for this are family-run businesses. Why? Because they don't care about the next quarterly result. You know what they care about? They care about sustaining the health of the organization for the future generations of their family. And so they don't want to piss it away on making some stock analyst happy. I mean, am I being a bit too skeptical here? No? Yes, sir.
Maybe also because in terms of mergers and acquisitions,
Yeah.
it's very helpful in making projections.
Right. Yeah. And
These families taking over the business of other families.
well, I mean, but I've seen a number of family-run businesses who are very good at acquisitions. But typically what they do, though, is they look at the culture and the behavior of the organizations they're acquiring. They're not just acquiring them for their products. They're acquiring them for their knowledge, their behavior, and how they're going to fit into the sustainability of their organization long term. My favorite one is Mars acquiring Wrigley. 2 family-run businesses. We helped them with the integration of that, and it was a no-brainer. Because we knew what they know. They knew what they knew, we knew what they knew. We're able to put the 2 things together in that way. So, but mergers and acquisition is another one. There's no doubt about it. You can easily lose that. So there's a lot of things here. So the next few slides I'm going to admit to you are the old part. The next few slides I used in 1999, okay? Because at the time, knowledge management was a really big deal. It was a bit more on the human side at the time, but now we've sort of got much more automation to go with it. So I'm going to just peel it back a little bit and say, well, first of all, there's a difference between data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And by the way, it is not a pyramid. It is not a pyramid, not from the point of view of a business. From the point of view of the business, data and information are raw materials you deal with in order to transact and do, or even make decisions. But knowledge is how you choose, what guidelines you have in order to make the decision. Does that make sense? It's a different purpose. And so when you start to look at process flow diagrams, by the way, BPMN is not your answer, okay? You start to look at process flow diagrams, it's not just the information that flows, it's the knowledge you need to say, was that acceptable? Was it not acceptable? Do I go left? Do I go right? That knowledge is absolutely essential. And if we don't articulate that knowledge, make it available, then we're not going to be as successful as we need to be as an organization. So my point on this one is knowledge is what guides humans and technologies in the use of information and data to make judgments, to take decisions, and to do work. Knowledge is a guide. Information is processed or transacted. That's the distinction I'm making on this, because if the knowledge doesn't have a purpose, why do we invest in it? Okay? So that's the first old slide that we have. I got a couple more. The next one is you can actually embody knowledge in people's heads, which is still a good idea. That's why we're all here. You can also embody knowledge, my terms, embody knowledge in physical assets, information systems, things which are reusable that a human doesn't have to do. So basically, knowledge can be embodied within a human. It's called tacit knowledge, and if you've heard this term before. Or it can be embodied in processes, services, tools, documents. That I would call that embedded knowledge, right? Have you ever been in a situation like this where you explain to someone, you write down all the things you went through, and yet they read it and say, yeah? And you say, yeah, but you had to be there. Right? You had to be there to sort of get that experience of what it was really like. at that particular time. So, but the point here is, to be successful, we have to interact. They have to work off of each other. There's a cycle of refreshing, updating, and so on. And we have to make sure, as designers and architects, we can't just design it once. We got to make sure we develop things so it continues to keep going. That's the sustainability part. Really, it's more important for us to be able to put in place the mechanisms and the capabilities to be able to continue to create knowledge and to continue to create and update what we know, because it doesn't last long anymore. So it's more the process by which we enable people to continue to do it, where we end up with a sustainable organization. I mean, it's no secret, if you look back 30, 40 years, and look at the top organizations in the Fortune 500, more than 50% have disappeared. Not just off the Fortune 500, they just disappeared, or been acquired along the way, or broken up and acquired, and something like that. So they're not, that's not what we really want, unless you're a chief executive and you're perfectly happy for your company to go down and you get that big payout, which is the only way you're going to get all that money. Again, am I being too cynical again? Right? So in other words, the motivation is not there to do it. So we have to find that motivation as much as we can. So for knowledge to have a value in a business, it must support action towards an intended result. I've heard this a lot, about this idea of purpose, the idea of why, answering the question why we do what we do. If you can't answer that, then how can you make a decision if you don't know what the why is, right? But we do it all the time. It happens all the time. So we're going to be a little bit careful about that. It's another old slide. And these are called epistemological dimensions, if you want to get it that far. There's a lot of good books on this stuff out there, if you really want to dig into this. Another one. This is something I put together in about year 2001, I think it was. I said, well, hang on. I'm curious. Whenever anybody uses a term, I like to figure out, what does that word mean? And so I've learned that the first thing you do is you go to the dictionary and you try to find the version of it which works for you. And they don't all work, of course. And so, I mean, the dictionary told me that I have knowledge if I can recognize something, I'm aware of something, I have information relative to that something, right? Or I've got experience, or I'm really confident I've got a good understanding. This is all about knowledge. And so I basically took those three things, recognition, guidance, and ability, and mixed it with tacit and explicit. And I came up with what I call my six-pack, which is a very popular term in the United States. I live in Canada, by the way. So really what we're saying here is that if I've got tacit recognition, it means I'm aware of something. It doesn't mean I know much else. I'm just aware. This is going, I can point people in the right direction. And explicit is just, I've got, basically, that's a click on a URL somewhere. That's explicit knowledge, which will lead you to the other forms of knowledge. That's the simple stuff. So, but in addition to that, there's the knowledge which is like guidance. So guidance available to people is someone helping somebody else do what they have to do through experience. When people learn a new job, they job shadow and they learn from somebody else. But over here, you can also have that guidance in documents. If you sort of think about it, this is where ChatGPT is playing right now. It's not doing all of this. It's playing in this particular section right here. So we need to be really careful. It's not our solution for everything that's taking place. And so it could fit in here. But also, we can basically put knowledge in people. People know how to do something. And sometimes they know how to do it, but they couldn't explain it to save their lives. Does that make sense? Right? So, I think we've all seen that. Somebody just goes and does something and says, what did you just do? Oh, I know, I think I did this and I think I did that. But then you can also have that built into your products. Quite often these days, we're embedding knowledge in products. We're embedding knowledge in services. We're embedding knowledge in as capabilities, right? So in other words, we're building them in. And so in a lot of those cases, what we're actually doing is we're taking business rules and we're making the business rules part of the automated solution. And so the business rules can go through straight through processing, automation. What have we done? We've taken the knowledge and put it into the solution. We've built it into the solution. So it's all of this stuff that really we can be looking at as we go all the way through here. So it's what guides us to do our work better and make better decisions. Do work, make decisions, right? That type of thing. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the old slides. We're going to sort of bring it back and relate it up to today. This is a really classic slide on knowledge management. What it says is there's tacit and there's explicit, and there's the transition from one to the other. And this is a great book by Nonaka Takeuchi, talking about how Japanese companies basically won for so long because they embedded knowledge in product, right? And what they did is they would go through cycles, and actually the cycles are almost like prototypes. You go through iteration, you learn, and you go from there. And so the idea is that, I can have tacit knowledge to tacit knowledge. That's called socialization. That's when a human talks to a human and tells them and trains them and works them forward in what they need to know. But then at some point in time, that tacit knowledge becomes explicit. I take what I know in my head, and I basically write it down somewhere. And then at that point, then explicit can then be shared with other explicit forms and so on. So this is almost like, in many ways, it's like building up all the websites which things like ChatGPT have gone and scraped all that stuff out of there. But a human has actually created that at some point in the past. A human was involved in creating the knowledge. Now, we can leverage it better if it's explicit, right? So if you've got an organization with 1,000 offices, you want the same thing happening everywhere, you're going to have to get explicit. You can't just have everyone talk to everybody else and have it all work out. So, but then at some point, we will also then go from, well, it's explicit, tacit to explicit. This is where I go look for the information. So something like a lot of the generative AIs are going to be able to do that for us. So this cycle continues. This cycle continues all the way through. So what have we learned here? Somebody said this week, and I can't remember who it was. Progress, thank you. Progress requires attention. And so what I'm saying here is this requires attention. It doesn't happen automatically by itself. And so as knowledge people, we have to sort of make sure that we have the capabilities to be able to keep this moving all the time, right? Last one of these, it's only here because my graphic artist did it, and he would kill me if I didn't show it. It's just so hard to draw this picture, but he drew it 20 years ago. This is really cool. Anyway, but the point is that you keep building, you grow the knowledge, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger with these iterations and cycles. The more things you bring into it, the more you can expand it out, and the more value it's going to be for everybody. Okay, so sustainability does not have a price. So does not have a price, so has no value. Who said that? You said that, right? Okay. Sustainability. So basically what I'm saying is, can we get a price, please? In other words, it's what is the price? Here's the good question. What is the price of not having the knowledge? There's a price. The opportunity cost of not keeping up to date and what's really going on here. So that's going to be key. Keep going. Now, just a couple of things to bring it into context here. What is the structure of knowledge? For all of you who do concept modeling, or some people call it object modeling, right? Those concepts, these are all the things I have to know about from an informational point of view. It's the same structure for your knowledge maps. It's exactly the same things you have to know about. It's just, you ask the question, what knowledge do I need about these things? So you've got tools already to help you do this. The other aspect of it is in your processes. Like, for example, here, in my check-in process, I have to know how to do that. People have to know how to do that. If I build a self-check-in solution, I'm embedding the knowledge in the solution so the person can do it for themselves. It's still knowledge that we're bringing to bear. It's not just data, it's actual knowledge. So, I mean, if basically it says that the knowledge structure is the same as the structure of the business concepts, and And then if I sort of keep going with this with an example, this is check into the hotel. Well, I need to know about guest loyalty programs. I need to know about visits and rooms and hotel, all the information about the hotel. I need to know about these. I have to have knowledge that centers around those. But also, I've got to know, how do I check in? Is the person who greets you at the front door, they're going to point you to the front desk, or they're going to point you to the kiosk. Now, this is a human-based knowledge process. This is an automation embedded process. They're both, how do I take that and put it out there in the best possible way? So it's not just the information flow. That's what I'm saying. It's more than the information flow. What else do you need to bring to it? So for architects and designers, we are going to do one of two things. Either the knowledge is either guidance for the work of the people in the organization, or is actually the product of your organization. So many organizations today are actually in the business of producing knowledge. I teach at university once a week, and I'm educating students, hopefully. They're learning something. But that's where our product is actually the knowledge that's being transmitted. But in other cases, it's, I need advice, I need policies, I need rules, and these things will guide what we're doing. It's one of those two forms that you can expect to see. So we have, of course, we have a mechanism for this. We call it the IGO chart, which stands for input, guide, output, enabler. It is not BPMN. Throw your BPMN away when it comes to knowledge management, right? Because the BPMN does not tell you what knowledge you need to do it. Whereas if I do an IGO, input, process, output, I can ask, well, what policies, knowledge, and rules constrain or guide what the process can do? This is where I'll put my knowledge in to be able to do it. Of course, I've got resources as well, enablers, to do that. So the way to start thinking about this is that we have a process of executing the business. Need comes in, results come out, but we also have a process of creating that knowledge capability. So what do we do with that? We actually deliver knowledge to the operational business, and we deliver capabilities with knowledge embedded to the operational business. And so we have to get good at this virtuous cycle. If we don't have this loop here, we'll never create new knowledge, we'll never learn, we'll never make it available to everybody else in anywhere near fast enough time that we need to better pull it off. So we have to think about ourselves as being in the knowledge business because we are creating knowledge for everybody else. All those models should be useful for making design and prioritization types of decisions. So that's what I say, architects and designers are in the knowledge business. There's a few examples, and we're almost done here. We'll have a few questions, I hope. This one up here, this is an organization we work with, a large Canadian bank, the wealth management division of the bank. We help them put in a hybrid advisor, which is the humans who know everything about where to invest, what to do next, but also the development of the capability where a lot of the stuff can be done through an automated self-serve type of solution. That's a hybrid advisor. We're seeing a lot of that type of stuff happening in that sort of knowledge-centric, helping people be successful. Next one was a Zurich-based reinsurance company. Their underwriting, pricing, and reporting was all based upon, when we first went in there, it was all like, these four people are God. Because they're the only ones who know how to calculate the risk associated with these types of decisions. Pricing, should we even take the policy in the first place? So we've helped them sort of introduce better knowledge management into that space. The third one, I think we're seeing this a lot of places now, is claims adjustment for things like property damage. Nowadays, an adjuster can go out, or a person can do it themselves, depending upon the size of the problem. Take photographs, send them in. The claim will be determined. You can go directly and get it fixed yourself. This is true where I live in the province of British Columbia, where basically you can go in, and there's trusted people who can just take those pictures, figure it out, and the insurance company does not have to get involved, right? So there's another example of that. This is a great one. This is quite well published now in Harvard Business Review. Shell for maintenance is now using drones and expert systems, knowledge management, AI, and they're basically significantly, by hundreds of millions of dollars a year, reducing the cost of maintenance, because you don't have to have people go out there on those terrible sites to check everything out and to fix it, right? So And the last one of these is an organization that I've worked with quite closely. This is called Technical Safety BC. They'll come out and inspect electrical inspections. They'll do electrical inspections. They'll do gas inspections. They'll look at elevating devices and things like that, so that people don't kill themselves when they're going to use these facilities. They can't inspect everything, so they have a list of all the things where people have applied for permits. They decide which ones to inspect. As soon as they put in an AI system to look at the experience and build it up over a period of time, they now catch, with the same number of people, they catch 4 times as many violations as they used to catch, right? And so they're being much more effective by using that type of thing, okay? So there's good examples of this out there. I know I'll get an extra minute or two because these guys are still here. And I'm going to say edgy, edgy, edgy. Right? So I really believe that edgy is a framework to capture the knowledge you need to have. If you've got the major phases, in the identity side of it, this is where I can actually use generative AI to go find out what's happening in this industry. Because I don't know it all, but a lot of it's published out there. I can get that back in. That's a really, really good tool for me to be able to figure out how to populate some of these objects over here, right? Over on the experience side, strong opportunity basically by getting insights. You can actually bring some insights in to help you with this. You don't have to create it all from scratch. And sometimes the people you talk to don't know any better than you do. I hate to say that. But you can actually use some of the tools for that. And I think the architecture portion is a very, very strong potential for the structured tools where we capture all the things which are in edgy. But the issue here is there's a lot of the stuff, especially in the identity area, where you still have to have humans decide. Leaders have to decide on the scope of what you're going to do. Like we've done work with Provincial Transit Corporation, where we had our project to do all this had to be the Transit Corporation, 42 bus companies that operated buses, 53 municipalities where the buses went. We facilitated workshops of 140 people at a time. We had to be really careful about how we did it. But the scope was beyond the corporation. The enterprise was all 3 of those sets of those organizations working together. That was the enterprise wider. But it could be smaller, right? So picking the scope is important. Figuring out the purpose. No AI is going to tell you what your purpose should be. Is that fair? You still have to make some of those decisions for yourself. And the commitment to knowledge management as a way of constant learning has to come from within the organization, because you have to get people's time to be able to do that kind of stuff. So what have we learned here? This is an important aspect. An external stakeholder perspective and an outside-in approach is mandatory. You've got to know why. You've got to know what you're doing, right? And by the way, when we do external stakeholder analysis, we always include 3 things you might not think of. Employees. We say employees are external stakeholders. They're not internal stakeholders. They don't have to work here if they don't want to. So we have to think about retaining the knowledge of those people. Secondly, we always consider the organization itself, but in a state 20 years from now. And the third one we always consider is the planet. We put them as stakeholders in the stakeholder analysis that we do. Does that make sense, everybody? It's a bit different. It's not just your customers, your suppliers, your owners, your regulatory bodies. You want to bring these other things in, and you want to sustain yourself with those parties. Then you have to consider them as parties in your business. And so we always basically take that point of view in. So, in conclusion, okay, not too bad, time-wise. All work can benefit from better knowledge assets. I really do think business architects and designers should be knowledge engineers. By the way, I will admit I did graduate from engineering school, so the fact that we're calling this architecture rather than engineering does miff me a little bit. And also, every initiative, you should look and say, is there a digital and AI opportunities? And what we're really seeing is a combination of digital and AI together is really making a huge difference. But what do I need to know when I'm actually doing that? And also I think here, remember the AI though is a means to an end. In other words, AI is just a tool to give you better knowledge. It's not, your organization should not have an AI program where the purpose is to get AI. Like I have one organization I work with in Australia, and they put out as one of their strategic objectives is to digitalize every process. And so every process now is out there finding a way to digitalize stuff, including stuff that has no real need to be digital at all. So everybody can go tick on the box, we've done something digital. Right? So what I'm saying? It's a means to an end. And also I think that some of these generative tools can be a co-pilot that can actually help you through. And you can at least come up with strong models to go in and have discussions and say, now let's change it based upon humans. So make it relevant, and I think our challenge is to that Nonaka Takeuchi cycle, explicit to tacit, tacit to tacit, tacit to explicit. We need to accelerate that cycle because it's been taking too long to do it. So we've got to be committed to it in order for us to be able to do that. Anyway, that's it. I think, as a lot of you know, until you get up here, you don't realize how short 30 minutes is.
It's real short. Thank you so much for a beautiful presentation. Some questions, thoughts to share? Final try.
Anything controversial or you disagree with or agree with is good too.
So you're saying that the knowledge management needs to be actively managed and sustained. But how do you actually resource that? Because what I'm seeing from the industry is that there's never enough resource to actually make tacit knowledge.
I know.
So I'm not quite sure. You're saying that historically, can you, this might help.
Am I just...
Oh yeah, thank you.
My bad, sorry.
So basically what I'm asking is, how would you suggest that that knowledge management is sustained? So because what I'm seeing in the industry is that there's never enough resource to actually do that. And once it's done, it's almost outdated. So it needs to be kept.
I think we all know how hard it is to sell formal design methods, architecture, because people who are responsible for operations and marketing and sales still for the most part, don't get that if you do it, they're going to be better off. I think if you look at your organization and say, what's the life cycle of our products and services? And how fast are they changing? And use that as the basis to convince them we really need to have better knowledge so we can bring better products. Continuing, it's not being a better product. This is not a transformation. As somebody said to me once, that if you want to lose weight, you don't go on a diet. Change your lifestyle. It's the same thing here. This is not an initiative. Maybe it starts with an initiative. But you have to sort of make that case because things are changing so quickly. We're losing people so fast. Like you have to find some key performance indicator that's really a pain point for them and hook it to that, is my experience. There's got to be a reason why they even would care about it. So, other questions? I know I'm the only thing between you and a beer. Not a good place to be. Yes, sir.
I think quite some enterprises are still recovering from the confluence addiction, and the fact that it doesn't work that way. You know, we need to go into an alternative way that when we build it up, the transients of the knowledge management itself is also a problem. So yeah, it keeps on going, and the intersection is or the edgy maps is a new perspective on the enterprise, and it's one of many. And it's the group of people adding to it, but it's also knowledge management.
I agree. And so, but that assumes you can get people at the senior level to even care or even look at them. Who's had that problem, right?
Yeah, we're locked in the governance cycles at the moment globally.
Right.
There's no leadership there because leadership, I believe, is a part of knowledge management and not a part of only governing the organization as it is.
Right. Right. But quite often, they're making decisions without the knowledge. They just have their own perceptions, their own opinion, and their own incentive to decide something which is good for them, but maybe not good for the next executive. So is that sharing of the knowledge is key. There's a great expression that goes, have you ever noticed that the bottleneck is at the top of the bottle? Okay, so we good?
We're good.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Big applause.
you.
Thank you so much.